Welcome back to the Bears Baseball Network. We had another great weekend of Bears baseball. I believe 5 different teams made it to the championship game this weekend, including all of our varsity youth teams made it to the championship. So a fantastic weekend of Bears baseball. And let's go ahead and get right into it. Hard to start anywhere else right now than the flawless, the absolutely perfection of the 13-0 9U Nickerson. This team... we talked about these guys last week, and again, I'm going to say I'm very impressed with how many different ways they can win games. I mean, you look at this weekend, they had a blowout win, they had a close, low-scoring game, they had a close, high-scoring game, and then they had, a game where they held the other team to no runs, and they scored a lot of runs. So it's like they can do it in so many different ways. This team, the pitching staff, I think has been the key point to this team that has propelled them from being a good team to this level of dominant, and I think it's just been really impressive so far. KJ, I know you get to see these guys every week at practice. It seems like this team, everything's working right now. They really don't have a clear weakness right now in the lineup. Tell me what you think about this 9U Nickerson start so far.
Yeah, they're good enough to, even when one fat's not going right, even if, they have a pitcher who's not throwing strikes, the defense and hitting can back it up. They're just that good that even if one thing's not going right for them, they have other things that are so good to back it up and win. And like you said, these guys have done it all. They've won big. They've come back down from big and won. They can win close. They can, they can do a little bit of everything. So I think this, who's saying how long this can go?
Bernie, I think we know kind of the big stars at this age. Obviously, the Blake Nickersons, the Easton Taylors. But 2 guys who I thought really caught my eye that I feel like are off to really good starts, Joe Moore and Peter Rojek, who I think have both come out the gates playing really, really well. I know Peter Rojek has been their starting center fielder playing well. Joe kind of plays all over the place. But, Bernie, we all know Blake. We all know Easton. I think there's a couple other names that are big names. These 2 guys, I feel like a lot of people don't really know, Joe Moore and Peter Rojek. What do you think of those guys' start to the season?
Yeah, with Joe Moore, I feel like at least as an outsider Nickerson, someone who has not been at a ton of Nickerson games, I know Joe Moore is one of their bigger hitters. Like the fact that he's batting 2 or whatever in the lineup isn't that surprising to me. But with Rojek, I always knew him as a pitcher just from the outside looking in. This guy, I think, has proven that he's one of the top hitters of this age group. Right, out to the first game changer, and he was batting leadoff, and I was like, I didn't know Rojek was actually that good of a hitter. I know him as a pitcher, but apparently he's been very good, and the stats will back that up.
Yeah, he's been absolutely fantastic. I feel like I was talking to Damien earlier tonight, and he feels like Peter is that breakout player so far this season who's come the furthest in the offseason. From what Damien told me, Peter, he was okay last year, but he wasn't this level of good, and he's been really, really impressive on both sides of the ball. So very happy with that for Peter Rojek. Moving on to 14U Floyd, they had a 5-0 perfect weekend. These guys, it felt like every bit of their game was working, and really the last couple weekends it felt like this team just keeps taking steps forward. But Bernie, I feel like the first place we got to go to is Lucas Wilburn made his return from high school ball, and did he do it with an absolute vengeance, Bernie? We played 5 games. He only got out 5 times, and he hit 5 extra base hits. I mean, this guy was doing it all, not to mention throwing a complete game in the championship. Bernie, this guy, he's an MVP caliber player. I know we were joking before the show that we said Lucas Wilburn's probably not going to win MVP after missing the first 6 weeks of the season. But if he plays like this, Bernie, it's going to be tough to beat him. Tell me about Lucas Wilburn and how much he means to this team and just the Bears as a whole.
Yeah, I know that we, kind of joke and saying that some high school guys, when they come back, they start off a little slow because, high school ball, especially your freshman year, first year in high school ball, the high school coach will start messing with your approach, messing with your swing a little bit, and try to get away from what we do with the Bears. But it seems like Lucas Wilburn stuck to his. I know he had a good high school season, and he looks all the way back here to start off the team. This is a massive part of 14 Floyd.
KJ, 2 guys who really needed to step up with those guys going at high school ball, Trevor Anderson and Joey Burgess. I feel like both are 2 guys that you were pretty high on going into the season, and both these guys have absolutely delivered. I would say Joey started a little slow, and now he's completely accelerated to elite, whereas Trevor started hot, kind of went into a dip, and now he's back to the top of his game as well. Willie B is back. Obviously, Lucas Velchek is back. But how big is it for this 14 Floyd team to have guys like Trevor and Joey who took these big step forwards going forward in the season?
Yeah, I think it just shows, how deep this lineup is. And, I don't think there's been a point where everything's been clicking. Yeah, the whole offense has been clicking. And, when everyone comes back, all the high school guys are coming back. You get the Wilburn back, you get Kester back, you get all these guys back. What this lineup can do is ridiculous. Top to bottom, 1 through 10. They're going to have 10, big threats.
The pitching staff was fantastic as well. Mason Geddes, 10 Ks to just 1 walk. Trevor Anderson, 7 Ks, 1 walk. This team as a whole had 31 strikeouts in 22 innings, so doing it on the mound as well, very, very impressive. KJ, speaking about doing it on the mound, 13U Floyd won their tournament on Sunday, and Caden Inman with an absolute monster performance in the championship game against a good team. I mean, this guy has been arguably the best pitcher in the Bears over the month of May, and was absolutely shut down in this outing, Bernie, or KJ. How big of it is it to have a guy like Caden Inman who can pitch that championship game against virtually any team? I mean, it seems like there's no matchup too tough for Caden. How big was that outing for him?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, that when we're pitching Caden, against a team that, no team's really better than us when Caden's pitching. I mean, he used to talk about him, and he was so effective when he was young. I coached him when he was 10. He was so good because he could just pump strikes. He didn't throw hard, but he just pumped strikes. And now, not only does he pump strikes, but he throws 4 different pitches, and they're all strikes. And he throws for high velo. So he can do a little bit of everything, man. And, against a really good team, that's the most dominant I've ever seen him be.
Not only for Caden Inman, but Cam Bernstein as well. Had probably his best start of the season. He was 1 out away from a no-hitter. Ended up with a complete game shutout, 1 hitter. Was very, very good. This pitching staff as a whole, 17 Ks, just 2 walks. And, Bernie, looking at this tournament on Sunday, obviously a one-day tournament, everybody's throwing their best gun. So I feel like 13 Floyd didn't necessarily put up the amount of runs that they're used to putting up, but the fact that the pitching and defense could keep them in these games, what does that say for you, Bernie, about the depth and the different ways 13U Floyd can win games?
Yeah, I think for me it just says you better watch out when this team's fully clicking, because if Caden's gonna pitch like that, if Cam's gonna pitch like that, Josh Chalmers keep what he's doing, that pitch staff's gonna be deep, right? And this defense we know is gonna be pretty good all season long. Once the offense gets clicking, right? Diego, Zizi, Garrett Knight, all those big dogs, this team's going to be very tough to beat.
Bernie, I said that all of our youth varsity teams made it to the championship game. Let's go ahead and take a look at 12U Burnsville. A massive win in the first game, cruised to victory in the second game, and then played a very good team in the championship. Again, one-day tournament. Only the top 2 teams made it to the bracket. You got a chance to go there and played a very good game against a good team. Lost 5-3, I believe, in the championship. But, Bernie, it feels like this team, again, I said it about 14 Floyd. I said it about 9U. It felt like this is the most complete this team has looked all season long. The pitching was fantastic. The defense came through when you needed to. And the offense, again, against some really good pitching, felt like they got hits when they needed to. How big was this weekend for 12U Burnsville, and what were your thoughts on the weekend?
Yeah, a couple big wins for the boys. Look, this team, I told them after they lost after the championship game, we got second place. I said, look, we played 3 nearly perfect games. We played a great game in game 1. Game 2, we played a team that's not that bad, and we made them look bad, I should say. We beat them 12-2. That team was really not that bad, though. Championship game, we played another tough team, and I will say in the first 2 games, we had used our 2 biggest guns on the mound, and Lewis Harrison Blaybomb. I threw Fish Finley up there in the championship game, and he actually had a very good start against a very good team. I believe 4 1/3, no walks, 6 Ks. Gave us a chance the entire game, right? That pitcher we faced was good, and Fish gave us a chance the entire game.
Yeah, I mentioned KJ's 13U team, 17 Ks to 2 walks. Bernie, your team maybe even a little better, 25 strikeouts to just 3 walks in the 3 games. I feel like we've said this before, but the pitching staff was probably, at least the depth of the pitching staff was probably the weakest part of this team last year. How big is it to have not just one guy, but multiple guys who can not only throw strikes, but give your team a chance to win against anybody?
Yeah, especially with guys like Owen Lewis and Fish Finley right now. Those guys pound the zone. Those guys are not going to walk anybody. So on any given weekend they're going to give you 4 or 5 innings. And then you have Harrison right there with them. That's, again, good for 4 or 5 innings. And then even still, right, Rudy's going to be a big pitcher here soon. Kale's been very reliable this season as well. So it's nice to have 4 or 5 guys to go to here.
KJ, I feel like the story for 12U Burnsville has been Harrison Blaybomb absolutely takes over. And this weekend, Harrison didn't hit bad whatsoever, but he was not the normal Harrison we've seen. And I feel like that would be normally the narrative for this 12U Burnsville team to not play well. But guys like Rudy Montenegro Langley, even a guy like Dowd Ishmael really stepped up in the offensive department. But those 2 guys, KJ, how big is it for this Burnsville squad to not necessarily need Harrison to take over, and they've got other guys who can contribute to the offense?
Yeah, this kind of reminds me, for a long time we kind of said in 18U, who's going to back up Mac and Brennan? And, coming into this year, we kind of said, who's going to back up the Owen Lewis and Harrison? And I think, none of us are really surprised by what Rudy's doing. But, a guy like Dowd Ishmael, again, a guy who's always had the potential, but maybe hasn't necessarily had the work ethic. And this year he's worked much harder. He's getting in programs. He's doing his thing. And it doesn't really matter who that Bernstein Burnstill team loses, they can take guys from them, and they'll be going home early on Sundays.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on here to 11U Floyd. Again, I feel like the most complete we've seen this team look. Came second place in their tournament as well. KJ, I feel like when we're talking about this team, I'm not necessarily sure they're quite ready to win, but they keep taking steps forward every single weekend. I thought it was a great weekend for them to come out, win 3 games, go to the championship, and play a competitive games all weekend, basically. I feel like the defense and pitching still has to come along, but the offense, there's some guys, KJ, who we expected to be really, really good, and then there's some guys that we are a little bit surprised are doing this good. So I want to start with you, KJ, and the guys that I feel like we kind of expected. Owen Haynes, Lucas Closter, Matthew Hume, all over 1,300 OPS this weekend. These 3 can absolutely mash. What are your thoughts about the kind of star power of this 11U Floyd offense?
Yeah, I think, this team has kind of a really good roster, and I think, it's just a sense of they're young and they've got to buy in, and those guys have all been bought in all season long. And as a team as a whole, man, I think they're starting to really get that taste of playing good baseball. It's starting to win, and it's addicting when you start, doing that. So I think it's only going up from here.
And then Bernie, the other 3 guys who had an over 1,100 OPS besides those 3, I feel like are a little bit more unexpected. Whedon Hainline had a monster weekend at the plate, Landon Hines, and Hamilton Case. These 3 guys, again, I feel like most people wouldn't have expected them to be hitting at this level right now. How big is it for 11U Floyd as they kind of move forward in their development to get production from not just their stars, but also some of their, current role players and guys who look to be stars in the future?
Yeah, it's massive to take that next step because I think if you look at my team just a year ago, starting last spring, it was the Harrison Leibom show and everybody else, right? It was who's going to back up Harrison Leibom. Right now, 11U Floyd has 3 different guys who are all, considered the superstars. They have 3 more guys who look like they're about to be, great supporting cast and not superstars themselves. So again, if those 3 guys are going to produce, and this team's going to be at least 6 hitters deep, this team's going to be very good very quickly.
A very, very fantastic weekend for the Bears this weekend. Probably the best so far in 2024. But this weekend we've got the high school guys coming back. Dalton, Floyd, Byrne, all back in action, as well as Driscoll and Latrania. So be sure to go out and check out some high school baseball if you want to see some of the best players in the Bears. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Bears Baseball Network, and we'll talk to you all next week.